between here, these two. So there are a couple of options you can do there. Format, vertical spacing, maybe I want to make it even. That wasn't much of a difference, but it was. Okay. So those are kind of nice. There, and you can explore with some of that. You can look at some of the other ones. You know, you can put things center on the form, either horizontally and vertically. So that makes a nice feature. I'll tell you how old I was. When Visual Basic came out, just the grid was available to us. And so, you know, I'm sitting there trying to even all these things out nice and neat to the grid. Thank goodness they were given this format options later on. Okay? So that is a couple of things that we can do to make formatting your form easier. The other thing I wanted to show you was when you highlight multiple, like in this case I've got all three of these highlighted. Because I've got all three of these highlighted and they're all the same type of object, I can change all three of them at the same time. Okay? So if you highlight them, and let's say I want to change the font to make it look bigger, I can choose font. Maybe instead of 8, I'm going to make this 12. And it will change all of them. Maybe I want to change the color to, let's get wild in there, dark red. So that's kind of nice when you're creating your form. There's a lot of things that you can use to make it easier. Okay, make it quicker. So I'm going to encourage you, anytime you get a chance to explore some of those, you can go ahead and do those more often. All right? So, any questions on the grid? Oh, let me just show you. When I actually run the project, you can see that the dots aren't on there. Okay.
So, you know, one thing I notice is you always go with like a theme, like a topic. It's like you like writing like the last tutorial you did was like wedding, cake, birthday, and all this children thing. It's like family, like like are you like focus on like a topic?
I'm just using them for examples. Yeah. We're just kind of, and I'm going to use these radio buttons in a different manner. Okay. So yeah, they're just examples that we're trying to think of. A lot of them are going to come from the textbook. So, all right. So as you can see, the grids do not show up on the form when you actually run it. It's just for design purposes. Okay. So any chance you get to experiment with the formatting, you know, up here using the format, you can do that. Anytime you want to maybe go beyond what we've covered in the properties, you know, I'll never discourage you from doing that. So I recommend you do it. All right. Does anyone know how radio buttons work?
Select one if you select zero.
Right. So the big problem with radio buttons is I've got two sets of data here. Male, female, that's one set of data, and then I have child, teen, and adult. That's another set of data. So if I run the project, check this out. I can only choose one or the other. I can't choose between the two different groups, okay, with radio buttons. We'll talk about checkboxes in the future, but checkboxes you can check a whole bunch. Radio buttons, the intention is to only choose one, okay? But we got a problem here because I want my user to be able to choose either male or female, and then I also want them to be able to choose child, teen, or adult, okay? So we've got some options there, and the way that it's designed right now, I'm unable to choose two radio buttons. So, what we'll do is we'll implement one or both of, they're called panels. If you notice, let's see, there's a panel right here. That's nice. We've got a group box that we can do. Or a group box right there. And what that does is it logically groups them together. Okay, you can use a panel or a group box. And I'll show you the difference. Okay, so if I put, I'm going to use group box first. So if I put a group box over here, can you see that? There's just like a little square, and then it also has the ability to put some text in there if we want. So that's the group box. If you look at the panel, I'll add one of those over. It basically serves the same purpose, only it doesn't have the ability to put text over this, okay? So you'll use those if you want to organize your objects in some sort of logical purpose. And in this case, we want to logically group these two together, and we want to logically group these three together, okay? So here's the tricky part. You actually have to put them, well, first of all, watch what happens when I move my group box over this. It actually covers it up, okay? These are technically called containers, and so what we have to do is we have to move the objects inside of either the group box or inside of the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'll drag those in. And so now technically these two radio buttons are inside of group box. If I want to move it around, they're all together now, okay? But here's the nice thing about it. I'll go ahead and, well, here, I'll run it. So now you can see I can choose gender, and I can also choose the age categories. If I wanted to, I could make this a little bit bigger. Let me make this a little bit bigger.
So by you running the program, what does it show, or like what do you like get from the running and like?
Well, right now, without running it, I'm just in design mode.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I run it, then I'm creating an executable. That's like a .exe. If anybody has used Word, the actual file that's running is word.exe. Okay. So this is really the same thing. We are compiling what we've designed, and then we're actually executing it so that we can do it. If I click on these right now, you know, I can't select them. I can't select them as in, you know, I'm choosing one of them. I can select them for, okay, let me run these. I gotta, there, that's better. Line to left, okay. So if I wanted to, here's the other thing. You can change a lot of these. Like for instance, the group box. I can change the text. I got group box selected. I'm going to change this to gender. Oops. All right, and then that kind of just gives a label. For the radio buttons. Okay. Panel. From a functional standpoint, it groups them together, but it doesn't really give a label. And if I wanted to put a label on the top of it, I could, but that would just be a separate object. Picking up what I'm laying down? You understand what we're doing with those? Pretty simple, isn't it? haven't done the tab thing yet. All right, so we know that if I go to each one of these objects, I've got a tab index, right? So I've clicked on child. It looks like over here, I got a tab index of a 2, and I got a tab stop, which means it's going to stop at that. It's kind of strange. Let's see what we got going on here. I'm just going to start tabbing. Goes between the two group boxes, okay? So that's something that we need to understand. I can, if I want to, I can use my arrow keys, but right now I've just got tabs between the gender and tabs between the age categories. Now, if I didn't have the group boxes, watch this one, I don't have the group boxes. Drag these out. I'm just going to go ahead and delete these for now. And then if I run, isn't that something? I can't tab between the two groups, all right, because it's thinking that it's just one group instead of the two groups, okay? I'm going to add a few more things on here. Let me put I'll put a group box in just one, just real quick, or as a panel. I'll put these guys in here. I don't have to use, just by using one panel, you'll notice that I can go between the two, okay? I don't have to use a panel for every group, but it's not a bad idea, okay? So now I'm going to add a couple of text boxes. We'll just kind of explore a little bit more with the tabs. So text box. Put one here, put one here. So now when I run it, maybe I want it to go to the text boxes first, okay, then the radio buttons. What you can do is what we discussed the other day. You can change the tab order by changing the value of the tab index, but there's a quicker way. If I can find it, view tab order. So if I hit view tab order, and then it sort of has this listing over here, okay? And all you have to do, now keep in mind, because I've got this in a panel, it's going to tab to this guy, then I can use arrow keys to get to that. I really can't use arrow keys for these because I have them, I don't have them grouped together in a group box or a panel. But if you want to change the tab order, all you got to do, remember, you just view tab order, toggles it on and off. But I can just do view tab order, and then I can click the order that I want. So maybe this is the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Yeah.
So say as a professional, how long it gonna take you? It can take you to do like a whole project.
Well, it depends upon how complex the project is. Everything that we do is really simple here, but I mean, I've worked on some projects that's taken me months to create.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So now what I've done is I've set the tabs, and now what I can do is I can toggle off. Okay. And then if I run it, it should go to this text box first. Yep. See, it's got the focus. And then now when I tab, it can it'll go in the right order, okay? Yeah, Justin?
Is there an option to have one of the radio buttons selected over the other one on startup? So like if, instead of having to focus on male, since it's the first one,
Yeah.
change it to adult.
So check
Like,
this
we're
out.
Focusing on the child, teen, and adult group, is there an option to focus on one over the other?
Yeah.
before startup?
Yeah, so one of the properties, love the question, one of the properties, here I've got male. I can, during design time, one of the properties is called checked. So right now it's false, so I can change that to true. And theoretically, it should be checked when, and I'll do the child also, let's see. So both of these should be set when we go to runtime. Yeah, so the defaults, right? And then all your, and then some people, depending upon the business, if they default these, they won't even tab to it. You know, I mean, if we're talking about people that are doing some power data entry, they might set the app up. If we set this male to, let's say we are a men's organization, and we're a men's organization for, I'll do adults, okay? And so what we'll do is, we will pre-check this one, we will pre-check the adult, and then all we're doing is maybe this is the first name and last name. We may not even tab to these, because that's just wasting time, you know what I'm saying? They'll just tab first name, tab last name, go to the next person, tab first name, tab. They won't even, and we're always talking about, we always want to be aware of trying to make it the most efficient, right? For data entry, the most efficient. Does anyone here, when we read something, we start from the left and we go across, right? And then we go down. There's other languages where it's done differently, right? Yeah, maybe they start from the right and they go left. So those are the things that you think about when you're designing a form is, you know, if we're doing something here in the Western world, we'll probably start up here and go across and down. If I've got a form, like for instance, let's say a customer fills out a form, and we take that form, and from that form we type in on our data entry screen. We probably want to have our data entry screen look exactly like that form. Does that make sense? Because our eyes are working that way. So when you're designing forms, you need to be aware of that, okay? All right, let's see. Okay, tab, grid, format, select all. Yep, panel view. Perfect. All right. Does everyone remember the toe chart? Let's review it. Review it real quick, okay? Because I got a project for you. Just a fun thing. You'll enjoy it. I'll just use this one. I'll use this form right here. Oh, let me change it real quick. Label. Label. One there. One there. I'm not going to change the name right now, but just for visual purposes.
Have you ever tried working for yourself before?
Yep. All right, so here's a form. It's not in very good order, is it? But we'll clean it up. Oh, check this out. I highlight them all, and I can move all of them at the same time. I'm just using the arrow keys, right? So just some, there, you guys will stumble across some of these things to do easily. All right. So we're going to review the toe chart because I got an exercise for you to do, okay, to create a toe chart. So if I were to look at this, someone tell me, how many objects are there? How many objects are on this form? You don't have to include the form.
7.
I'm gonna say 10, okay? And it sounds kind of strange, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the panel, which is 10, okay? So when you're creating a form, lots of times your customer will give you the form, or they'll tell you the stuff that needs to be on it, and then you create the form, okay? But if I were to create a tow chart, I'm not going to do all 10, but you'll know what I'm talking about. We've got the task, and I know this is a review. We have the task, the object, and then the event. Okay? And then there, I do have a project for you to do out there, so I want to make sure we understand this. So the task is, we just kind of say, what's the purpose of each one of these objects, okay? It's just the purpose. So, like, I'll have a task of display label first name.
Wouldn't it be easier to start with the object?
Well, that's a good question. There might be a task. We need to know what needs to be done. This is part of design. So we need to know what needs to be done, and then the next thing is we need to know how we're going to do it. So that's a good point. We could create a task list without really knowing what language we're working in, because we could be working in C# or and they might have their objects might be a little bit different. They'll have the same function, but they might be called something different. Who asked the question? Was it? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So first we need to know what needs to be done, and that's what we're doing with tasks. We're just figuring out what needs to be done. Okay. Quite frankly, we could create a tow chart without even having this. You know, maybe the user is saying, look, I need to have a name displayed, I need to have a text box that, I mean, they're saying, they won't say text box because maybe they don't know what a text box is. But they'll say, I want to be able to display a label, I want to be able to accept values for the first name, I want to display a label, and then I also want to be able to accept the value for the last name. I want to be able to click and make sure that I can choose between, you know, male or female. So in the design world, we figure out what needs to be done first, and then after that, we determine how we're going to do it. And when we start identifying the objects, that's when we start talking about how it's done. It's a subtle difference. We as programmers, we already know what the objects are. But let's say you're not a programmer and you're, or let's say you are a programmer, but you're not determining this, someone else is determining that. Like a business, they call them business analysts or a scrum master.
Yeah, so would that be considered like a order, like tax, like somebody placing an order or something?
Yeah, right. So we as programmers, we may not know what it takes to place an order.
Oh, you're not on the other side.
Yeah, but I'm just saying someone from a business standpoint, they will know that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just say display, and it wouldn't even, I shouldn't even use the word label. It should be something like display first name. Okay, so that's the task. Then the other thing is going to be accept first name value. So we as programmers, we know that there's a text box involved and a label involved. And then maybe let's say the task would be able to select be able to female. And these are in simple terms because, you know, you probably have to say, we need to make sure that we can just choose one or the other, not both. So we as programmers, we will look at it and say, oh, okay, this is going to be a label, LBL name, or let's do first name. Okay, and then this is going to be we're accepting values, so this is going to be a text box, first name. I'm not going to do all of them, but you kind of get the gist. Does that make sense? Where, yeah. So more than likely, if you're lucky, if you're a programmer, you're also the person that gets to decide what needs to be programmed. But if you go work for a large corporation, this is where you're lucky. Other people will tell you what to do. Does everybody like to be told what to do? I'm joking. But
Now, sometimes,
yeah, you're right. Sometimes I don't want to have to make a
especially
decision.
like doing my orientation, I'd be so glad, you know.
Yeah. But does that make sense? So like if I work for Principal Financial Group, they just hire me as a programmer. They've hired other people to be designers or customers. And so they will decide what needs to be done. And then you as programmers, you decide how it gets done, okay? So over here, you know, just by reading it, I'm going to say that's going to be a radio button, radio mail.
Yeah. Teamwork make the dream work.
There you go. You know what? There's a lot of, there's truth to that. Can I just say something? I'm sure Susan will tell you this. We have to make sure our students understand that it used to be people thought programmers were just, you sit in a desk by yourself and code away. It's not that way anymore. You actually work together in a group. How many here was in that presentation yesterday with Nico? I don't know if that team was a very good team. Did you guys pick up on that?
Yes.
For those who, did it come across as being a good team?
And everyone was new, so like it's kind of.
Yeah. All right. So let's say it's an inexperienced team, but it seemed like there was a little problem with this area right here. The people in charge, if they're not around to answer questions.
So I thought about asking him, like, if he could go back and start over, would he have
Accepted
them being in different positions in the project? Like you said, if he was working on this part, would he have felt more comfortable doing this section
Yeah.
versus the other?
Yeah. But you're right. Teamwork makes the dream work. You know what I mean? So I'm telling you, this owner of this company has a dream, but they need to understand, you know, what it means to be a team and how. But if you work in a large corporation, you're going to be on a team, okay? I worked at Principal Financial Group. I worked at John Deere Tumble Works. I always worked in a team, okay? So it's not you sitting in a computer doing all your thing by yourself, okay? So here we identify what needs to take place. And then these two, I would say pretty much how we're going to do it. Well, we're going to use some objects, and if an event exists, we're going to have an event. So this event, you know, I'm telling you right now, there may be an event for text boxes, but in this case, we're not going to worry about it. With the radio buttons, we're going to say click. Okay, as soon as those radio buttons are clicked, we're going to have some code behind it, and it's going to perform some sort of function. Does that make sense? In the case of these radio buttons, all they do is they select it, is what they do. All right, so I'm going to quit talking. I do have a project out there in my hills, okay? First of all, does anyone have any questions about this? Really, if there's an object on the form, it's performing some sort of a task. Even if it's just a picture box, you know, the task is I want to display the picture, okay? So every object that's on the form has a task. I should say every task has an object. Not every object has an event, okay? So, I'm gonna go out to my hills, go to learning units. Projects. And then if you notice, oh here, I gotta make it visible. It should be pretty simple. Hopefully you'll think it's simple.
Oh, why is it so quiet in here? Can somebody scream?
All right, so if you got two things. Oh, it's not staying up. Okay. You got the tow chart, it's a document, and then you have a Dropbox, okay? It's gonna be real simple. You open up that document, it's got a form, and then all you need to do is identify the task, the object, and the event.
So, is that in the other?
It's in the projects folder.
I'm talking about Word. Is there any other Office product that you can access for free? Cause like, I can't do anything nowadays because I can't get no
Yeah.
Microsoft Word.
What you can do is, here, I'll do one thing here. I'm going to do something here, just a second.
When will this be due?
Let's go with Monday. It should just take just a second. Let me give it a name here. I'm going to create it as a PDF. So, let's see where I put that.
Hey, anybody been to Pella before? It's like an industrial place, right? They got a lot of machines, factories, like they're making a lot of tools.
They have some. It's actually a very rich town.
It's rich, right? Yeah, I can tell. It's very rich.
All right, so what I did is there's a PDF version of it. So if you want to use the PDF instead of the Word document. Hey, do me a favor, have that have that done by Monday. It should literally just take a few minutes, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah.
I already submitted the project one, but it's on a zip file. Would you like me to reset that?
Yeah. Here, let me see if it's set up to be reset.
So on that code chart, we're just filling in what we see there in the chart.
Yep.
Every one of these boxes in the chart you build or.
Yeah. I think there's 10 objects, and I think there are 10 lines. 10 rows. So for every object, write down the task, the actual object, and then if there's an event or not. And then yeah. So whoever you can resubmit the project again. Okay.
If I have project.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Should I hit me up sometime? Go if you want to go out. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for allowing me.
I wasn't sure what all was supposed to be.
Yeah, so the whole project. So which one are you, Jim? So right click on that, send to.
See.
I was also wondering before.
He did that for 35 minutes.
Oh.
That's a long time.